Welcome to the oneLifemaps podcast. Here's
Greetings,
your host
this is Sharon
and co-author
Swing.
of Listen to My Life.
I am here today
Maps for recognizing
with
and
the
responding to
oneLifemaps
God in my
Director
story,
of Facilitator
Sharon
Development,
Swing.
Joan Kelley,
Hello, everybody.
and co-author of Listen to My Life, Sibyl Towner.
Hi.
And to just introduce the two of them with just those particular pieces of what they do is minimizing at best. So you'll have to find out more about them in some other ways. Listen in as we talk about something related to the Valley Experiences Map, which is map number 4 out of the Listen to My Life, Maps for Recognizing and Responding to God in My Story materials. And in the middle of this map, there's how do I grieve in healthy ways is the question that's there. And I think that's such a great question to have some options for, because I don't know that we're taught how to grieve. And at one point in time, we kind of crowdsourced this list of healthy ways to grieve, and it became a very interesting reference point. So we're going to start down this list, and I'm just going to mention one and see what Joan and Sibyl want to say about that. Say, first one was, it's okay to cry.
That was my first one, too. It's funny. Yeah, we have to give ourselves permission sometimes to cry.
Mm-hmm.
I think, too, sometimes I'm with people who are in a place of loss, and they cry, and they start apologizing, and it just makes me so sad that they think they have to, that it's not right, that it's not permissible, or not in public.
Or somehow they're less than because they do cry.
I think it's beautiful. I think it shows a glimpse of our souls.
And not only does it show a glimpse of our souls, our broken hearts and our souls need to be watered. And tears are the way of watering. And also within your bodies, it is scientifically studied that when you weep, there is a reordering that allows your body to realign and to re-engage. So there's actually an article called The Gift of Tears.
Yeah, there's a different chemical in tears, of grief tears.
Yes, in fact, look it up on the internet. They have microscopic photographs of different kinds of tears because tears of joy look different than tears of grief. And it's just really interesting and
how can you not believe in God?
Yeah, I mean that somehow our body is expelling certain chemicals differently in the different kinds of tears that we have. It's amazing. Yes, so one of our listening guidelines along the way is not to fix, rescue, or advise, and we often talk about don't hand someone a tissue. It seems like kind of a nice little gesture, but the reason we tell people or suggest that they might not hand somebody a tissue, Sibyl, why do we do that?
Yes, well, we're asking them to mop it up. We don't want them to go any further, and really, they probably have many more tears. And if they need a Kleenex, let them get it.
Right, because otherwise we're telling them, I don't want to deal with your sadness or grief or tears right now. Your emotion is making me feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And for us to realize that there might be some resistance to other people's emotions in a way that maybe if we welcome them, something interesting might happen, not only for them, but for us. That there's a gift in those tears for both of us.
Yes.
And a point of vulnerability to be able to share. Okay, the second one on our list, we're not going to get through all these very quickly. We might have to do 2 parts in this one. So acknowledging the hurt.
So when you say that, it makes me think of really the work of the Valley Map, of putting some words around the loss and the loss behind the loss and the emotions, if we can name them or attempt to name them, that are associated with it. It's an important part of the healing process.
Right. And there is no emotion that is not acceptable. There may be deep rage. There may be just incredible bitterness towards something that happened. There may be blaming. There may be, anyway, the emotions are a teacher. They then help us know what the next step might be, or they open us to a way in which God might speak to us. And most of our cultures have emotions that are allowed and emotions that are not allowed. And so we need to be given some spacious space.
I think emotions and feelings too are, they're like indicator lights on your dashboard. Think about in your car, when those lights come on, you're like, wait, I need to attend to that yellow light that says check engine, or do I not? But it's something I need to look into. And so being aware and curious about some of these emotions in our grief is an important work.
Yeah, and I think we need to say that although rage is a valid emotion, it's just how we choose to express it. And the boundary is, if we're hurting other people, then it becomes an inappropriate expression of that particular emotion. But having the emotion itself is not the problem. And there are healthy and unhealthy ways to express these emotions, and they are deep. They are very, very deep emotions that are in play here. Okay, so find a community that will be with you is the next one on the list.
Well, we talked about this related to this particular map. Companions are incredibly important. Life is not meant to be done alone. There are places where we may be by ourselves. There are places the way people break people down is to put them in isolation, to try to get a particular behavior or information out of them. And so we know that we are built for community. And so in the places of grief and hurt and loss, we need others with us, not to fix us, not to do anything more than really be present and to be able to respond to what that person is needing.
I mean, listening is the key there, and listening and being with, I would say, for sure. And it might be it's a healthy way to compensate, but it's you might have to stumble a bit in that one to find the right set of people for the deeper listening. And there might be other cluster of people that are just able to be present with you, maybe not to go to the deeper places. And it might be a little, kludgy until you kind of figure out who those people are, that are either a little further down the journey, or they're just great listeners, or they're able to walk alongside you or someone else in your life.
Yes, and I like that you say you might take a little time to find this.
And that's okay.
Yes, and
people's capacities are different for listening and being with, and
the next two are related. It's spiritual directors and counselors.
Well, those are some of those people. Yeah, it's kind of relates to what we just talked about. There's some deeper listening kind of people. I think those two in particular, it's nice to have somebody who's emotionally kind of unattached to you and your story and all the players in your story, that can kind of take a step above and look down and help be reflective, but still in this process of being with and listening in a deeper way.
Well, there are certainly losses where, and Jerry Sitzer in his book, A Grief Disguised,
A Grace Disguised.
A Grace Disguised, talks about the inability, lost it.
To do this alone.
Yes, to do this alone, and that it does take a little bit of time, but that sometimes that the loss interrupted something that wasn't completed, so that
So an
someone
unexpected
yes,
loss.
so an unresolved relationship,
Right.
and so in that regard, a counselor is helpful because there is a processing that I can't do maybe with that person and anymore, but I need to be able to do that. Sometimes in the loss of a parent or through a divorce or others, I need to be able to sort that out to live with health going forward.
Right. And these are people that have been academically trained to know what the process of grief looks like. And there's no excuse for us just to be human with people and come alongside people in grief, but to have people that actually understand the anatomy of grief to help you through it is invaluable. It's just been invaluable at different points.
And I think the other thing related to spiritual directors is many of us have, we all have an interesting theological construct. And sometimes we don't know what it is until something happens to us. And so someone got a disease and they told me, I did everything right. I went to church. I read my Bible. I went to Bible study. I did this. Why is this happening to me?
What did I do wrong?
And so spiritual direction is about your intimacy with God. And so in that place, a spiritual director might be helpful, or a spiritual listener, in helping you sort out and letting go of the God that you have known up to this point, who is not the God who is, and letting that go to embrace a God who is big enough to be present in your current situation, no matter what it is.
Right. So you have spoken to something right there, that if someone has a theological construct of, okay, if I do everything right, then in turn, God will keep me away from these various different hurts and harms. Say a few more words about how that theological construct doesn't work in grief.
Well, we are not in control of things that happen to us. I mean, tornadoes come through, illness strikes, jobs are lost, children go awry. We let each other down. We are actually trying to earn God's love in that kind of a theological construct, and there is no earning of His love. His love is freely given to us, and so we have to let go of that way of trying to relate to God and allow His love to enter the space that we cannot fix, and that He has capacity to sort and guide and invite us to grow.
Yeah. I mean, that's a double hurt, whatever the hurt was, and then also thinking that God must be mad at me. To allow this to happen, He must be mad at me, which is then putting ourselves in a place where we can't find God in the midst of it, and not even recognizing it. He wants to be with us in the difficulty to help us through it.
Yeah. Well, we can't even find God, and it's sometimes, someone just recently said to me, I think I have been hiding from hearing God, because I don't really want to hear what he has to say to me. And so what I say is, God, if I hear you, I will do what you say. But in actuality, they were able to name that they have a deaf ear. You know, they and it was a fresh awareness. So to them, just at that particular moment, it's been going on for some years, but just think about that. We are often deaf to the tones of God's love for us, and
Because we have our fingers in our ears and saying, I can't hear you, God, where are you?
yes,
Well, and our
In some
vision's
ways.
not so good either, right?
No.
Our image of God is oftentimes incorrect. We're constantly re-imaging God,
yes.
and that's part of our formation, but our vision is off.
Mm-hmm. And we are a bit self-referenced in that we would actually like to be God. So it quite gets in the way.
Now there's the story of Adam and Eve rushing forward into our own lives, right? So next on the list is use your body.
So, one way to use your body in a healthy way in coping with your grief and your loss is, things like walking have been important, or running, or kickboxing, or punching bag, or whatever. There's something about using your body in a physical way, not even in just a releasing way, but just as a way to express, what is going on for you as you move through your loss has been super important. Massage could be, or yoga could be another great one. Yoga in particular uses your breathing, which I think allows you to open up some spaces.
Yes, because you have places where you think that you actually cannot breathe, and that you have lost something, or something that was very important to you. And so it does impact your breathing, whether you know it or not.
Sybil, you always say that your body tells the story, right?
Yes, so it tells the truth, and it tells the truth. And so paying attention to our bodies is critical. It's paying attention to where we carry the pain. I felt today in my shoulders. And so, I just sort of relax them. But sometimes with a child, and even with myself, I'll put my hand, just as you do with a child, tell me where that hurts. And sometimes it's a feeling. Somebody hurt them today or something. So where is your body carrying that? And then being quiet, putting my hand on it, which creates warmth, touch. And then saying, I wonder what this part might be wanting to say to you. And so you're giving it space to possibly express some words. And this has been a wonderful way with children. And since, we have referenced the book, A Grace Disguised, a father who had young children whose their mother had died, and in the evening when he put them to bed, he would ask them that question about what was good today, using the examine, and then asking them what was hard. And in the hardness, then he asked them, is there a place in your body that is holding that?
Yeah.
And so seeking then with the touch and with possible words, bringing comfort and presence to that particular place.
I remember having a massage at one point, and I was crying, and the masseuse said, do you just need to cry, or you just need to let me know if I'm hurting you? And I felt a little embarrassed that he knew I was crying, and he said, no, it's perfectly fine. A lot of people come just to cry. It's fine. You're in good hands, and just realizing that he knew that he was creating a space for whatever needed to be released. And that was a gift. And my body was holding it in my neck and shoulders. and all. And I've heard people say just to be able to put your hand like on places in your body that are sore, even in the morning, and say, I know you're hurting right now. I'll be good to you today. I'll watch out for you. You know, just tell that part of your body that you'll be kind to it and care for it during that day, and just try to breathe into it and relax. And in fact, the next one on the list is to breathe. And so we're already halfway into that by talking about our bodies, but when we're grieving, and when you think about it, when you cry really hard, sometimes it's hard to catch your breath. And it's one of those things where you have to be able to breathe in order to breathe out. And that rhythm of breathing and restoring the rhythm of breathing, Sibyl can't help but breathe as we do it, right? And it's like, just we talk about it, we instinctively want to and when you just stop to breathe, it's like acknowledging that the emotion is there and trying to see is there a way to comfort the emotion in us.
And actually, with the breathing, and if you are in an open position in your body, you are really allowing oxygen to come into those parts of the body to allow them not to constrict and to have a free-flowing movement. And I think that's a part of why walking is such a wonderful exercise. It isn't doing something that's super intense, which at moments can be really helpful, but it's slowing you enough. And if you're walking outside, you are in most places connecting to some form of creation.
Right.
And so there's another invitation that comes in that. There are smells, there are sights, there are sounds, again, that your body is engaging in what is really in you. And one of my losses was moving from Cincinnati to Chicago, my home for many years, where we raised our children. And when we moved to Chicago, I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, well, I can probably find some kind of a pill that will help me not feel so bad. And then I thought I could also walk. And so I really walked most days. And I paid attention to the creation. And one of the things I noticed in March was that all the oak leaves had not fallen. And I just had the thought in my mind as my body is moving, it's March, I've been here for 6 months, and I still am feeling this loss. And so I looked at those leaves and said, you haven't fallen either. And you as well. It seems okay that I'm still holding this. And so just through creation and walking, I felt permission to be where I was.
Yeah, and the walking gives us, a lot of times we start breathing in rhythm with our walking. So it can restore kind of a natural cadence that is a life flow, kind of an in and out and all. And then when you talk about nature, I think that's definitely one that needs to hit this list, is just being in nature and finding places that we can put our feet on the ground, to feel grounded, to take a hike or whatever. I remember hiking in northern Minnesota a couple of years back and just being very, very aware it was fall, and there was a lot of moss and a lot of mushrooms because it's such a wet environment, lots of evergreen trees and all in the mix of it all. Lots of trees that have fallen and decayed and a lot of things growing out of them. The moss and the mushrooms and everything growing out of it. And I thought to myself, this is how things are. Something dies and new life comes. So even in the fall, it wasn't just in the spring, but there's just this evidence of in the fall there was so much evidence of the decay, but yet there was still evidence of life, but usually in very small forms emerging. But something dies and something comes from it. And there's a rhythm to how grieving works in that same way too, if we are willing to kind of just release whatever it is we're grieving for enough. Because I think in the grasping of it and the holding on tight to it, there's also sometimes more suffering involved than somehow this surrender to what is. Because most of our losses, it just is what it is, but we're still holding on to it so tightly. And nature tells us the truth too.
I think that creation, for me, it awakens my soul, and it awakens parts in me that I didn't know were asleep or dead or numb. I think a lot of grief has to do with feeling, numb. And I think creation is one of those ways of waking up some parts of me.
Yeah. Corrie ten Boom and Betsy had a dream when they were both in the concentration camp of having a house for people after the war, and of planting gardens. And Betsy died before Corrie was freed from the prison, and she then went and found a house and took in people who had come out of the war and out of the trauma. And one of the first things they did was they planted plants. And so you began to see what you talked about, Sharon, that cycle of things. There is a sense of dying, but even the stewardship of that which is decaying is really feeding the new birth that is coming. So everything is used and reused, and so that which is dying comes forth in that new plant. In a way, if we get our hands into it, we actually can experience it, and it provides a healing within us.
Yeah, and speaking of Corrie ten Boom and the concentration camps, and I remember when I visited Dachau, one of the camps, when we were traveling one time, and what an emotional experience it was to see one of these places, and the gas chambers, and it was just overwhelming with the amount of to walk into this place where you know that this much death and destruction had happened. And yet, interestingly enough, the surrounding landscape was rather barren at that time of year. I don't remember what time of year it was, but the grass was incredibly green and vibrant in a color that was so striking. But that was actually where the ashes of the people were spread, was in this area. And it was just like this just overwhelming sadness, but yet here is this greenness of this grass that was more vibrant than I had ever seen before, coming out of this many years later, that soil is so fertile. And made me just wonder, what would these people tell us today? What would they tell us about how to live?
Right.
These people that were so oppressed and suffered so much. So yeah, there's just these interesting little interludes that happen as we intersect nature that just kind of sometimes just bring a question and a wondering or a noticing, or bring a sense of peace that you just can't quite get in another way. Maybe there's a babbling brook. Somebody mentioned the other day to me that remembering one of their peak experiences about riding horses as a kid. And she says, there's a horse farm not too far away from me, and I've never just gone to the fence and looked at the horses. It's like, well, why don't I go do that? Just these pieces of clues as to what might bring our soul alive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this part of the conversation on how to grieve in healthy ways. We're going to push pause on it and pick up the rest of the list next week. So this podcast episode will come in a part 1, part 2, and I hope that you'll tune in again next week. Go ahead and search through the rest of our podcast episodes. We're all about helping you to recognize and respond to God in your story. So we've got plenty of topics in the archive now to browse through to find other useful topics. Until next week, this is Sharon Swing.
Have you thought, I don't know myself anymore? Have you wondered, is there something more? Are you at a crossroads in life and asking, which way will lead me toward expressing more of who I am made to be? Are you looking for a way to understand the restlessness you feel inside? Are you seeking a deeper spiritual life and desire to rediscover who you are through God's eyes? You're ready for the life mapping experience of Listen to My Life. Go to oneLifemaps.com to purchase your portfolio of visual life maps. While you're there, check out our upcoming virtual coaching groups, live workshops, and options for you to facilitate the Listen to My Life experience with others. That's oneLifemaps.com. oneLifemaps.com.